Hello and welcome to Science for Bedtime. If the day has felt heavy or your thoughts are still moving too quickly, you're in the right place. This channel is made for slow science, gentle curiosity, and peaceful nights. You don't have to concentrate, and you don't have to remember anything. You can simply listen and let the story carry you towards sleep. And if these calm science journeys help you unwind, feel free to subscribe. It's a quiet way to support the channel, and it helps more bedtime listeners find their way here too. Now settle in, let your shoulders soften, let your breathing become easy and unforced. You can imagine the words as a soft lamp in a dark room, present but not demanding anything from you. Tonight's story stays close to the ground, close to leaves and roots, sunlight and soil, and to living things that do not run, do not chase, do not leap, and yet somehow survive almost everywhere. To living things that do not run, do not chase, do not leap, and yet somehow survive almost everywhere. Forest floors, deserts, mountaintops, wetlands, salt-swept coasts, shaded understories, bright clearings. They endure winter, they endure drought, they endure being chewed, trampled, cut, and burned, and still, again and again, they return. Plants, we know they grow, we know they turn toward light, open and close, flower, fruit, and fade. We know they respond. But tonight we're going to ask a question that sounds simple at first, and then becomes strangely deep the longer you hold it. Is it possible that plants can think, not in the way humans think with words and images and inner voices, not even in the way animals think with quick movements and split-second decisions, but in some quieter sense, in the sense of processing information, remembering patterns and choosing between possibilities? Because here is the puzzle. A plant is rooted, and from the moment it sprouts, it is anchored to one place. From the moment it sprouts, it is anchored to one place. It cannot flee a predator. It cannot search for a mate. It cannot walk toward water or shade when conditions turn harsh. If danger arrives, the plant cannot escape the way an animal can. And yet plants are not helpless. They are strategic in a way that is easy to miss, because their strategies unfold slowly, measured in hours, days, weeks. Their movements happen on a time scale that our attention does not naturally follow. And that perhaps is one reason we underestimated them for so long. We tend to associate intelligence with motion. We imagine a fox adjusting its hunt to the wind, a crow shaping a stick into a tool, a dolphin learning a pattern, solving a puzzle for a reward. Even insects with their tiny brains navigate with remarkable precision, guided by smell, sight, and memory. In the animal world, intelligence often looks like action, a visible choice made in real time. But what kind of intelligence could exist in stillness? What kind of cognition could unfold in quiet tissue, in sap and cell walls, in the slow pulse of chemical signals? The idea sounds strange, and yet it keeps appearing at the edges of modern research. Not as a poetic metaphor, but as a scientific question, tested in laboratories and explored through careful observation. Because plants do something remarkable. They sense. Not just one or two things, but many, often simultaneously. Light intensity and light direction. Moisture and nutrient gradients. Gravity, touch, temperature, chemicals in the soil, chemicals in the air. The presence of neighbors, the shadow of competing leaves, the saliva of an insect feeding on them, the approach of drought. A plant is not a passive object in an environment. It is a responsive system, constantly monitoring, constantly adjusting, constantly balancing trade-offs. And trade-offs are where the story starts to feel interesting, because a plant often faces choices. If resources are limited, should it invest in roots or leaves? Should it stretch upward quickly, risking a thinner stem, or grow slower and sturdier? Should it produce defensive chemicals now, spending energy it could have used for growth? Or should it wait and hope the threat passes? Even if we avoid the word choice, we still see selective behavior. we see context, and context is one of the quiet hallmarks of intelligence. Some researchers describe plant behavior using words that would have sounded almost outrageous a few decades ago. Words like decision-making, anticipation, communication, memory, even learning. If those words make you tense, you can let them relax in your mind. We don't need to force plants into human categories. We can simply notice what they do and let the evidence speak in its own slow rhythm. One of the most famous examples comes from a plant that seems almost designed to challenge our assumptions. It's called Mimosa pudica, the sensitive plant. If you touch its leaves, they fold inward quickly, as if flinching. The motion is surprisingly fast for a plant, a sudden collapse of leaflets that looks almost animal-like. This is thought to be a defense, a way to deter herbivores, or perhaps to reduce water loss, or to protect delicate tissues. For a long time, this was considered a simple reflex. Touch equals closing. But then researchers began asking a different kind of question. What if the plant could learn that certain touches are harmless? In laboratory studies, scientists repeatedly dropped water droplets onto the leaves from a fixed height. At first, the plant responded as expected, closing its leaves again and again, and then something changed. After enough repetitions, the plant stopped closing. Not because it was broken, not because it was exhausted, because when a new, more threatening stimulus was introduced, like shaking or a more forceful disturbance, the closing response returned. The plant was not simply failing, it was discriminating. It was treating one repeated stimulus as safe and another as meaningful. Even more strangely, this reduced response persisted. Weeks later, after changes in environment, the plant still remembered, in some biochemical sense, that the harmless water drop stimulus did not require a full defensive reaction. A plant with no neurons, no brain, no central nervous system. Still, something in its living tissue had recorded history and adjusted future behavior. If that is not learning, it is at least a functional cousin of learning, a way of calibrating its response that changes with experience. And once you accept that possibility, the plant world begins to look different. You start noticing how much of plant behavior is not immediate reaction, but pattern-based adjustment. Take a small flowering plant often used in genetics research, Arabidopsis thaliana. It is not dramatic to look at. It does not snap shut like mimosa. It does not climb with tendrils in a visible spiral, but it has a rich internal life of signals. In some experiments, Arabidopsis thaliana was exposed to cold stress at the same time each day. And after a few cycles, researchers observed something unexpected. The plants began activating their cold response genes before the cold arrived, as if preparing, as if anticipating the rhythm of discomfort. This is not consciousness, it is not imagination, but it is prediction in a biological form. It suggests that plants can store temporal patterns and use them to modify physiology ahead of time. And that tiny distinction between reaction and preparation is one of the most interesting frontiers in this field because it points to something like internal modeling, not a picture in a mind, but a pattern in a system, a way of using the past to shape the future. We often assume that to predict, a creature must have a brain. But perhaps prediction is a broader phenomenon than we thought. Perhaps it can emerge whenever a living system can integrate information over time, compare it, and adjust thresholds for response. Plants do this through networks of chemical signaling, hormones, and electrical changes, calcium waves, shifts in gene expression, changes in the sensitivity of receptors, feedback loops that alter how a stimulus is interpreted the next time it occurs. Instead of a central command center, plant intelligence, if we use that word carefully, appears distributed. Each cell participates, each region senses. Roots and leaves exchange signals. A stimulus at one leaf can alter responses in other leaves, even if those leaves were untouched. Damage on one side of a plant can trigger defensive chemistry throughout the entire organism. In animals, coordination often flows through nerves and brains. In plants, coordination flows through vascular tissue, through cell-to-cell communication, through chemistry, moving in slow, purposeful currents. If you imagine a plant not as a single object, but as a network, the mystery becomes easier to hold. And then you begin to see another layer. Because plant behavior is not only internal, plants also communicate with the world around them. Some of that communication is underground, through roots and the living soil. Some of it is airborne, carried by molecules released into the air. And some of it is mediated by partners that are not plants at all, fungi. In many ecosystems, plant roots form symbiotic relationships with fungi called mycorrhizae. The fungal threads spread through soil, increasing the plant's access to water and nutrients. In return, the plant supplies the fungi with sugars produced by photosynthesis. This relationship is ancient, widespread, and surprisingly intricate. And what makes it even more fascinating is that fungal networks can connect multiple plants at once. In forests, mycorrhizal networks can link the roots of many trees, sometimes across large distances. Through these networks, resources can be shared. Carbon can move from a sunlit tree to a shaded sapling. Nutrients can be redistributed depending on seasonal need, and chemical signals can travel as warnings. If a tree is attacked by insects, it may release signals that move through the fungal web, prompting neighboring trees to boost their defenses before the threat reaches them. It is an early warning system, silent and slow but real. A forest that shares information, not with words, but with molecules. And above ground, plants have another way of signaling. When damaged by herbivores, many plants release volatile organic compounds, airborne chemicals that drift through the air like invisible smoke. Nearby plants can detect these compounds and respond by increasing their own defensive chemistry, producing tannins or bitter compounds, thickening leaves, or changing growth patterns. In a sense, plants are listening. They are eavesdropping on the chemical whispers of their neighbors. This challenges the old assumption that plants are isolated individuals. Instead, they appear embedded in information-rich communities. A tree is not only a tree, it is part of a living neighborhood. And in some experiments, plants even seem to respond differently, depending on who is nearby. There is evidence, still debated and explored, that some plants behave less aggressively in root competition when grown beside close relatives than when grown beside strangers. The sea rocket plant, for example, has been used in studies suggesting a form of kin recognition, where related plants allocate resources differently, favoring coexistence over conflict. Again, we do not need to imagine feelings or intentions. We only need to notice differential behavior, a system that distinguishes between categories and adjusts accordingly. And when you pile these observations together, you begin to see why some researchers argue that plants may display a kind of minimal cognition, not consciousness, not a mind like ours, but the ability to acquire information, integrate it, store it over time, and use it to guide adaptive behavior. In other words, to do more than react, to interpret, to prepare, to choose between strategies in the face of uncertainty. Consider how a plant navigates a difficult environment underground. A root tip at the edge of growth is packed with receptors. It can sense gravity, moisture, pressure, chemical gradients, even the presence of other organisms. When it encounters an obstacle, it bends, it tests different directions, it explores. If it finds a nutrient-rich pocket, it branches more heavily into that area. If it encounters soil that is salty or toxic, it may avoid it, unless the reward beyond is high enough to justify the cost. Some experiments with Arabidopsis thaliana and other species suggest that roots can adjust growth based on a kind of internal cost-benefit balance. If nutrients outweigh the risk, the plant continues. If not, it holds back. This is not random wandering. It resembles foraging. And foraging, even in animals, is rarely a simple reflex. It is a constant negotiation between risk and reward. In plants, that negotiation unfolds slowly, in branching decisions made in the dark, shaped by chemistry and feedback. And it invites another question. If a plant can evaluate trade-offs, does that qualify as intelligence? Or do we simply lack the vocabulary to describe what plants are doing because our language of intelligence was built around animal bodies? Perhaps we have been looking for the wrong signature. Perhaps intelligence does not always wear a face. Perhaps it does not always move quickly. Perhaps it can be rooted, silent, and patient. And if that idea feels strange, you can let it feel strange. Strange does not mean false, it only means unfamiliar. Now, as we continue, we can drift deeper into the mechanisms that make this possible, the slow electrical pulses in plant tissue, the waves of calcium that ripple through leaves, the chemical logic gates that determine whether a response is triggered or withheld. We can explore plants that learn associations, plants that anticipate rhythms, plants that communicate warnings through air and soil, and plants that solve problems not with muscles, but with growth. And somewhere along the way, without forcing any conclusions, we may find ourselves seeing the plant world differently. Not as scenery, not as passive, green background, but as living systems, processing information in a language we are only beginning to understand. As we stay with this idea of plants as slow but responsive systems, another layer of their hidden lives begins to appear. Plants do not only respond to what touches them directly, they also respond to what happens nearby, sometimes even before a threat arrives. Much of this awareness travels invisibly, carried by chemicals released into the air or dissolved into the soil. When a leaf is chewed by an insect, for example, the plant does not simply suffer the damage in silence. It releases volatile organic compounds, tiny airborne molecules that drift outward like a quiet signal. Nearby plants of the same species, and sometimes even different species, can detect these molecules and respond by strengthening their own defenses. Leaves may become tougher. Bitter compounds may increase. Growth patterns may subtly shift. The plant under attack is, in a very real sense, warning its neighbors. This chemical communication is not random. Different threats trigger different chemical blends. The saliva of a caterpillar produces a different signal than a simple mechanical wound from wind or rain. Plants can distinguish between these inputs and tailor their responses accordingly. A tomato plant, for instance, releases one set of compounds when attacked by a specific herbivore and a different set when threatened by pathogens. The message in the air is precise. It is not simply danger, but what kind of danger is approaching. And the receiving plants do not all respond the same way. Their reaction depends on their own condition, their past experiences, and even their genetic relationship to the sender. In forests, this communication becomes even more intricate. Beneath the soil lies a vast network formed by mycorrhizal fungi, symbiotic partners of plant roots. These fungal threads, sometimes called hyphae, weave through the earth, connecting the roots of many different plants into a living web. Through this network, resources can move from one plant to another. Carbon fixed by photosynthesis in a sunlit tree may flow to a shaded sapling struggling below the canopy. Nutrients can be redistributed during times of scarcity, but just as important as the exchange of resources is the exchange of information. Chemical signals can travel through this underground network, alerting nearby plants to drought, disease, or insect attack. A tree under stress may send a warning through the fungal web, and its neighbors respond by preparing their own defenses before the threat reaches them. This underground communication is selective. It is not simply an open pipeline where everything flows everywhere. Some studies suggest that plants may prioritize kin, sharing more resources or sending stronger signals to genetically related individuals. Others show that signals can be amplified or dampened depending on the urgency of the situation. A mild stress produces a gentle whisper. A severe attack sends a louder chemical alarm, and the receiving plants interpret these signals based on their own internal state. A young sapling may respond differently than a mature tree. A well-watered plant may ignore a drought warning that sends a stressed neighbor into immediate preparation. What emerges from this is not chaos, but coordination. A forest behaving not as a collection of isolated individuals, but as a loosely integrated system, sharing information across space and time. This idea has led some researchers to describe forests as having a form of collective intelligence, not a mind, not a consciousness, but a distributed capacity to sense, respond, and adapt together. In this view, intelligence is not something housed in a single organism. It emerges from relationships. And plants do not only communicate with their own kind, some can listen in on the signals of entirely different species. In experiments involving sagebrush, damaged plants released airborne compounds that nearby tobacco plants could detect. The tobacco plants, even though they were not the intended recipients, responded by increasing their own defenses. They had learned that the presence of certain chemical signals in the air often preceded danger. This kind of eavesdropping blurs the boundary between individual and community. Information becomes a shared resource moving through ecosystems like a slow conversation carried by wind and soil. At this point, the idea that plants are passive begins to feel increasingly inadequate. They are not simply reacting to the present moment, they are integrating signals, comparing conditions, and adjusting behavior in ways that reflect both history and context. Some plants even appear to anticipate future conditions. In experiments with climbing plants, rotating light sources were used to create predictable patterns. Over time, the plants began adjusting their growth not toward where the light currently was, but toward where it would be. Growth shifted in advance, suggesting a form of expectation based on repeated experience. The plant had not just sensed the pattern, it had internalized it. Similar anticipatory behavior has been observed in circadian rhythms. Nearly all plants possess internal clocks that track the passage of time over roughly 24-hour cycles. These clocks operate even in constant darkness, maintaining rhythmic patterns of gene expression, leaf movement, and metabolic activity. Plants use these internal rhythms to anticipate sunrise and sunset, adjusting photosynthesis and growth before environmental changes occur. This is not reaction, it is forecasting. The plant carries time within itself, encoded in molecular feedback loops that persist even when external cues disappear. These internal clocks also help plants anticipate seasonal changes by measuring the length of day and night, a process known as photoperiodism. Plants can time flowering, dormancy, and reproduction. A plant does not wait until winter arrives to prepare. It reads the slow shift in daylight and adjusts its physiology weeks or months in advance. In this way, plants do not merely endure their environment, they prepare for it. Preparation implies memory. And memory in plants takes a very different form than in animals. There are no neurons storing experiences in synaptic patterns. Instead, memory is distributed across tissues in chemical states, hormone levels, and epigenetic marks. When a plant experiences stress, such as drought or extreme temperature, it may alter the way certain genes are expressed. These changes can persist long after the stress has passed, affecting how the plant responds the next time similar conditions arise. In some cases, these altered response patterns can even be passed on to offspring, a phenomenon known as transgenerational epigenetic inheritance. The experiences of one generation shape the behavior of the next, not through changes in DNA sequence, but through changes in how that DNA is used. This kind of memory is quiet and invisible, but powerful. A plant lineage that has endured repeated droughts may produce offspring that are more conservative with water from the very beginning. Seeds from stressed parents sometimes germinate differently, grow roots more deeply, or activate defensive pathways more quickly. the past leaves a trace. Not as a story remembered, but as a strategy embedded in biology. As researchers explore these processes, some have begun to rethink the very definition of cognition. If cognition is understood not as consciousness or self-awareness, but as the ability to acquire information, store it, process it, and use it to guide adaptive behavior, then plants begin to fit the definition surprisingly well. They sense, they integrate, they remember, they anticipate, they respond selectively rather than reflexively. They solve problems in their own way at their own pace. Consider how roots navigate soil. A growing root tip is one of the most sensitive structures in the plant body. It can detect gravity, moisture, chemical gradients, physical obstacles, and even the presence of nearby roots, both from the same plant and from others. When a root encounters resistance, it does not simply stop. It bends, explores alternative paths, and adjusts its growth direction. If it finds a region rich in nutrients, it branches more extensively there. If it encounters harmful conditions, it may retreat or slow growth. This behavior is not linear, it is exploratory. In controlled experiments, roots have been shown to preferentially grow toward areas with higher nutrient concentrations, even when the path is more complex or indirect. The root system behaves like a forager, probing the environment and committing resources where the payoff is greatest. Some researchers have proposed the idea of a root brain, not a literal brain, but a functional analogy. Charles Darwin himself once suggested that the root tip acts like the brain of lower animals, coordinating movement and response. Modern studies have found that regions near the root tip are especially active in electrical signaling and calcium flux, processes reminiscent of neural activity in animals. When this region is damaged, root behavior becomes disorganized, as if the plant has lost its sense of direction. While controversial, this idea highlights an important point. Complex processing does not require neurons. It can emerge from networks of interacting cells following biochemical rules. Plants also demonstrate conditional logic. Some responses only occur when multiple conditions are met. Carnivorous plants provide striking examples. The Venus flytrap, Dionea muscipula, does not snap shut at the first touch. It requires 2 touches within a specific time window to trigger closure. This reduces the chance of wasting energy on false alarms like raindrops or falling debris. The plant is effectively implementing a logical rule. If stimulus A and stimulus B occur within time X, then respond. This temporal discrimination implies short-term memory, stored not in a brain, but in electrical and chemical changes within the leaf. Aquatic, carnivorous plants like Utricularia go even further. Their bladder traps open and close in milliseconds, triggered only under precise conditions. The system is highly selective and energy efficient. Once triggered, it takes time and energy to reset, ensuring that the plant does not respond indiscriminately. These mechanisms show that plants can encode thresholds, timing, and sequence, fundamental components of information processing. Some plants even appear capable of associative learning. In experiments with pea plants grown in maze-like setups, researchers paired a gentle breeze with a light source. Over time, the plants began to grow toward the breeze even when the light was absent, suggesting they had learned to associate one stimulus with another. When the pairing was reversed, the plants adjusted their behavior accordingly. This is not a simple reflex. It is a learned expectation, updated when conditions change. And perhaps one of the most astonishing examples comes from a vine native to Chile, Bucilla trifoliolata. This plant can mimic the leaves of the plants it grows near. If its host has small round leaves, Bucilla grows small round leaves. If the host's leaves are jagged or elongated, Bucilla adjusts its own shape to match. What makes this remarkable is that the vine can do this without direct contact, suggesting it detects cues in light patterns or airborne chemicals. The plant is not following a fixed blueprint. It is altering its form based on its surroundings, blending in to reduce the risk of being eaten. This is camouflage without movement, identity shaped by context. As these examples accumulate, the question shifts. It becomes less about whether plants think in a human sense and more about what kinds of intelligence exist in the living world. Intelligence, it seems, may not be a single thing. It may be a family of strategies, shaped by evolution to fit different ways of life. Brains are one strategy, distributed chemical networks are another. Plants show us a form of intelligence that is slow, embodied, and deeply integrated with the environment. They do not separate themselves from the world to think about it. They think through it, through soil and air, through growth and chemistry, through relationships with fungi, insects, and other plants. Their intelligence is not fast, but it is patient, not centralized, but resilient, not loud, but persistent. And as we continue to learn from them, plants are beginning to influence not only biology, but technology. Researchers in robotics and artificial intelligence are drawing inspiration from plant strategies. Soft robots that grow rather than walk. Distributed systems without central controllers, algorithms based on route exploration and resource allocation. In a world where resilience and adaptability matter more than speed, plant-like intelligence offers powerful lessons. But for now, you don't need to follow these ideas to their conclusions. You can let them drift, let them soften. Like roots slowly finding their way through dark soil, these thoughts can move gently in the background, without effort. The world of plants is quieter than ours, but it is not empty. Beneath the stillness is a constant conversation, a slow unfolding of decisions shaped by light, water, time, and memory. And as you rest, breathing evenly, it's enough to know that intelligence takes many forms, some of them silent, green, and patiently alive all around us. As these ideas about plant intelligence settle, they begin to gently reshape how we think about intelligence itself. For a long time, we have treated intelligence as something fast, centralized, and visibly active. We have looked for it in movement, in problem-solving under pressure, in quick reactions and complex behaviors we can easily recognize. But plants invite us to consider a different model, one that is slow, distributed, and deeply embedded in the environment. One where intelligence is not something that sits inside an organism, but something that unfolds through its relationship with the world around it. In plants, information does not rush, it seeps. Signals travel through vascular tissue, through chemical gradients, through subtle electrical changes across cell membranes. These signals may take minutes, hours, or days to fully unfold, but they are not random. They follow pathways shaped by evolution, pathways that have proven effective over millions of years. A plant that responds too quickly may waste precious energy. A plant that responds too slowly may miss its chance. What we see instead is balance, a careful tuning of thresholds that allows plants to act when it matters and remain still when it does not. This balance becomes especially clear when we look at how plants manage risk. Every decision a plant makes carries a cost. Producing defensive chemicals uses energy that could otherwise support growth or reproduction. Growing taller increases access to light, but also raises the risk of wind damage or collapse. Expanding roots into new soil may uncover nutrients, but it may also expose the plant to toxins or pathogens. Plants continuously negotiate these trade-offs, adjusting their strategy based on internal needs and external conditions. These negotiations are not conscious, but they are structured. They follow rules encoded in chemistry and physiology, rules that can be modified by experience. One of the most elegant examples of this negotiation lies in how plants regulate their internal chemical economy. Beyond the basic compounds needed for growth and survival, plants produce a vast array of secondary metabolites, including alkaloids, terpenes, and phenolic compounds. These substances play roles in defense, communication, and stress response. Importantly, they are not produced at constant levels. A plant adjusts their synthesis based on current threats, past encounters, and anticipated future conditions. A leaf that has been attacked before may respond more rapidly the next time, producing defensive compounds faster and in greater concentration. This phenomenon, known as priming, allows plants to respond efficiently without maintaining high defenses at all times. Priming is a kind of memory, one that exists not as a stored image or thought, but as a lowered threshold for response. The plant's internal systems are tuned by experience, ready to react more quickly when similar conditions arise again. This tuning can persist for long periods and, in some cases, across generations. Seeds produced by stressed plants sometimes carry altered epigenetic markers that influence how the next generation responds to similar stressors. In this way, a plant's history becomes part of its legacy, shaping not only its own behavior, but the behavior of its descendants. This idea of inherited experience blurs the line between learning and evolution. In animals, learning is typically confined to an individual lifetime, while evolution unfolds over many generations through genetic change. Plants occupy a middle ground. They can modify their behavior based on experience and pass some of those modifications forward without altering their DNA sequence. It is a flexible system, allowing rapid adjustment to changing environments without waiting for slow genetic mutation. This flexibility may be one of the reasons plants have been so successful across such a wide range of habitats. As we step back and look at the plant kingdom as a whole, a pattern emerges. Plants do not rely on a single solution. They rely on diversity. Different species solve similar problems in different ways. Some invest heavily in chemical defenses, others grow quickly and reproduce before threats can catch up. Some form alliances with fungi or insects, others rely on physical structures like thorns or tough leaves. Even within a single species, individuals may adopt slightly different strategies. Some seeds germinate quickly, others delay. Some roots explore aggressively, others cautiously. This variation is not a flaw, it is a strategy known as bet hedging, spreading risk across multiple approaches so that at least some individuals survive unpredictable conditions. This probabilistic approach to life is another quiet hallmark of intelligence. Rather than committing everything to a single plan, plants distribute their chances. They allow uncertainty to exist and respond to it not with rigid control, but with flexible adaptation. In a world shaped by changing climates, shifting ecosystems, and unpredictable disturbances, this may be one of the most powerful strategies of all. These insights have begun to influence fields far beyond botany. Engineers and computer scientists searching for new ways to build resilient and adaptive systems have started looking to plants for inspiration. Traditional artificial intelligence systems are often modeled after animal brains, emphasizing speed, centralized processing, and rapid decision-making. But plant-inspired systems offer a different blueprint, one based on decentralization, local sensing, and gradual adjustment. In such systems, intelligence emerges not from a single powerful processor, but from the interaction of many simple units, each responding to local conditions and sharing information with its neighbors. In robotics, this approach has led to the development of soft robots that grow rather than walk. These machines extend themselves into their environment, sensing obstacles, moisture, and pressure as they go. Instead of planning an entire path in advance, they adjust continuously, much like roots navigating soil. In swarm robotics, plant-like strategies are used to coordinate groups of simple robots that collectively solve complex tasks without a central controller. Each unit follows basic rules, but together they exhibit flexible, adaptive behavior. Even in computing, researchers are exploring how principles from plant biology might inform new kinds of algorithms. Root growth patterns have been used as models for solving optimization problems, such as finding efficient paths through complex networks. Instead of calculating every possibility, these algorithms explore many options in parallel, reinforcing successful pathways over time. This is not thinking in the human sense, but it is problem-solving, guided by feedback and experience. Some researchers have gone even further, experimenting with plant tissues themselves as components in biohybrid systems. Plants naturally respond to changes in light, humidity, touch, and chemical exposure, making them sensitive environmental sensors. By measuring subtle changes in electrical activity or resistance in plant tissues, scientists have created systems that detect pollutants, toxins, or changes in air quality. In these setups, the plant is not just an object being monitored, it becomes part of the sensing apparatus, a living component in a larger information processing system. All of this feeds back into a deeper philosophical shift. If intelligence can exist without a brain, if learning can occur without neurons, then intelligence may be less about what an organism has and more about what it does. It may be a process rather than a possession, a way of interacting with the world that allows a system to survive, adapt, and persist in the face of complexity. This perspective invites us to see intelligence as a spectrum rather than a hierarchy. Humans occupy one region of that spectrum shaped by language, abstraction, and culture. Animals occupy others with their own specialized forms of perception and action. Plants occupy a region that is quieter, slower, and more diffuse, but no less sophisticated in its own way. Each form of intelligence is tuned to the life it supports. As these ideas gently unfold, they also invite a sense of humility. For centuries, we have treated plants as background, as resources, as passive scenery for animal life. But the more we learn, the more we see that plants are active participants in their ecosystems. They communicate, coordinate, and adapt. They shape the environments they inhabit, influencing climate, soil, and the lives of countless other organisms. The oxygen we breathe, the food we eat, the landscapes we cherish, all flow from their quiet labor. And perhaps there is something calming in this realization. The world is full of intelligence that does not rush, that does not shout, that does not demand attention. Intelligence that unfolds patiently, leaf by leaf, root by root. Intelligence that reminds us that complexity does not always announce itself. Sometimes it grows silently, waiting for us to slow down enough to notice. As you rest now, you can imagine this hidden world continuing its gentle work, roots exploring the dark, leaves adjusting to faint changes in light, chemical messages drifting through air and soil, a vast living network of slow decisions and quiet adaptations unfolding all around you, even as you sleep. There is nothing you need to solve, nothing you need to decide. The plants will continue their patient intelligence without effort, without awareness, without hurry, and you too can let go of the need to think, allowing your own rhythms to slow and soften, guided by the same ancient patterns of rest and renewal that shape all living things. As the night grows quieter, it's all right if the details begin to blur. You don't need to hold on to every idea or remember every example. The story has already done its work. Like water slowly soaking into soil, the thoughts can settle gently beneath awareness, leaving only a sense of calm behind. Plants have no need to hurry, and neither do you. Their lives unfold in long arcs, guided by rhythms older than memory. Sunrise and sunset, warmth and cold, wet seasons and dry ones. They listen to these patterns not with ears, but with their entire bodies. And in doing so, they remind us that awareness does not always need words, and intelligence does not always need speed. Somewhere right now, roots are moving through the dark, sensing moisture and minerals, choosing paths that offer the best chance to grow. Leaves are adjusting almost imperceptibly, responding to changes in light too subtle for us to notice. Chemical messages are drifting through the air and soil, carrying quiet information from one living being to another. None of this requires effort or attention. It happens naturally, patiently, as it always has. And just as plants trust these slow processes, you can trust your own body to know how to rest. Your breath already knows its rhythm. Your heart already knows when to slow. There is nothing you need to force and nothing you need to solve. Sleep is not something you achieve, it is something you allow. You can imagine your thoughts becoming like leaves at dusk, no longer reaching, no longer turning, simply settling into stillness. If a stray idea drifts through your mind, you can let it pass without following it. The way clouds move quietly across the night sky, there is no need to engage, no need to respond. The science will remain here, waiting patiently, just as the plants do. Knowledge does not disappear when you rest. It stays rooted, ready to grow again when the light returns. For now, it is enough to rest in the feeling that you are part of something vast and quietly intelligent, a living world shaped not only by struggle and speed, but by cooperation, memory, and time. As your body grows heavier, you might imagine yourself as part of this slow landscape, grounded, supported, breathing in rhythm with the night. Your thoughts can sink gently downward, like seeds settling into soil, safe and undisturbed. And if sleep comes, let it come naturally. If it takes a little time, that's all right too. The night is patient. There is no deadline, no expectation. Just the quiet continuation of life, unfolding softly all around you. Plants will keep growing in the dark. Roots will keep searching. Leaves will wait for morning. And you can rest knowing that even in stillness, life continues its gentle work. Sleep well, dream softly, and when you wake, the world will still be there, calm and quietly alive. Good night.